Local San Diegan, doing deals here from the commercial real estate side, but also investing heavily.
My dad said, hey, well, if you don't know what you want to do, I just purchased this building. Followed him around town, he went to some of the properties he had listed, some of the properties he was managing, and yelled at some tenants who were behind on rent. It was just kind of good getting a taste at a higher level, like what people are doing in this space.
What would you say to somebody that is in fear of debt?
I was fearful of debt at one time too. Once you know your business model like the back of your hand, and then you learn how debt works, debt will allow you to be 5 times as effective as if you did not utilize debt.
There's the street way of doing it.
Oh yeah.
And then there's the book way of doing it.
There are ways that we can't talk about on a podcast or publish.
That's probably one of the best things about real estate. One of the few industries where you don't need some crazy high degree education. You just need absolute grit, a willingness to learn, and a hunting approach. All right, everybody, welcome to the Abundance to Give podcast here today. I have an incredible guest, Alexio Barbara. I was going to call him Barbara on the last name, but if you have not seen this guy on social media, it's pretty cool. Local San Diegan, doing deals here from the commercial real estate side, but also investing heavily. So we're going to kind of get into that today, but riding your foil on Mission Bay.
Oh yeah.
I mean, how many views have you gotten on those videos?
I haven't tracked the views too much, but definitely the foil ones get some interest. I don't know. Usually those ones will get like 10K views.
When did you start? Like, how did you learn to do that? And then how long have you been doing it?
Well, the foil is, I actually don't know how to do it without the motor. I've tried a couple times.
It's like doing the pumping.
Yeah. With the pumping, it's definitely harder to do the pumping. But with the motor, it's just so fun. I mean, I can take it out. It's one of those like solo sports. So you don't rely on other people, especially having a family now. Like you never know when you're gonna get that free time when the kid's gonna go down, and you have like, an hour to go do something active. Yeah.
Right.
So no, it's been great, and I live right on Mission Bay, so it's the garage is about 100 yards from the water.
Have you? Because I kiteboard.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I started that during COVID. I'm like, oh, what a great idea. Let's pick this up.
On the wake surfboard? Or?
Yeah. So, you got the kite, but I do it in Mission Bay as well.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't done it in a little while because of my shoulder injury.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, I learned it during COVID, got into it. I haven't gotten good enough to go out into the ocean yet because that's like, there's really 3 stages to it. Mm-hmm. One of them is in like the small little bay. Mm-hmm. Then you go into Sail Bay over there in Mission Bay. That's like stage 2 for the better wake surfers. And then you got into the ocean for the guys that really know how to do this thing.
Right. Yeah. So, and it's, I learned how to do the kite surfing when I was, I don't know, I guess I was 16. My dad was super into it. We'd go up to Belmont Shores. And,
so that was like back in the, they've gotten the technology.
I think it's gotten a lot
so much better.
I mean, I remember I learned in Mission Bay too. It's really hard to learn in Mission Bay because we don't have that much wind.
That's right. And so you need to have big kites. Yeah. Usually the 12, what they call them 12 to 14 meter kites here in San Diego because our wind is pretty light. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's fun, man. The San Diego Mission Bay is just amazing. And then I once I got good enough to get up and cruise around, you got to see all the different parts of the bay. Then you go out the inlet, which is kind of like my thing that I do now. And that kind of
on the foil.
Yeah, on the foil. Shit. And so that actually, that's like the challenging part now. Because then some days there's big surf, some days it's like a lake out there. But like on the big surf days, you're like you're like hyper zoned in. And what I love about it is it's like you're getting that flow state.
If you fall out in the ocean, is it pretty easy to get the thing moving again? Or do you have to be on pretty flat water?
No, it doesn't have to be flat. You just have to get better. I mean, it's harder to get up when you're not on flat water.
Right. Because
you just got to get enough speed. And once you have the speed, you can feel the foil taking, and then you just got to lift off. And sometimes that happens like right before a swell comes. So you got to like take off and get over the swell.
Because I see, I've done that a couple of times, and I was down in Cabo learning how to do the foil thing, and it was cool, but it was super choppy that day. And I'm like learning out the first time, it didn't end well.
Everybody, the first day you're kind of just cruising on the board, and the second day you're and like eating it a bunch of times, and then the second day usually is when you can get up on foil, and like by the end.
Have you ever cracked your head on that thing?
I've
seen people I've come a couple times where I fall on that thing and I'm going right down towards That's
the scary thing with the foils, because you got it's like such a clunky thing. It's kind of like, especially with the motor. One time I jumped. Usually you try to jump away from it and like really jump away, but there's one time where I did that, and then the nose went in, and then it shot back and came back towards me as I came out of the water. and the propeller clipped between my fingers, and I was like bleeding.
Did they have a cover on the propeller?
Not the one that I have.
Oh Jesus!
It's still really hard to do that. That's like kind of a freak incident, but yeah, it's
holy cow.
It's part of the risk that makes it fun.
So tell me a little bit about kind of your initial upbringing into, I guess, real estate, but then commercial real estate. Where did you kind of cut your teeth on it? And then what are your big goals kind of moving forward?
Yeah. Well, real estate has always been in the back of my mind. My grandpa built some properties. He was a big developer in San Diego.
Okay.
Initially in Houston, then he came out to San Diego, built some properties.
Your grandfather.
Your grandfather,
okay.
Yeah. My grandpa developed some properties in North County, and we actually own one of those properties still to this day. And he built quite a few properties all around San Diego, was a big building inspector. And he passed on the understanding of managing and renting apartments and building wealth that way to my father, who kind of, out of all of his offspring, my father, his stepson, was the only one who took interest in that. And so growing up, I used to collect the laundry coins, and we'd spend Saturday mornings putting them all in the little paper bag, paper things, and then counting them, making sure there's exact, and then taking them to the bank. And that
was had laundromats.
Well, they were just part of the laundry rooms on the
apartment
buildings.
Yeah. Gotcha.
Yeah. So that was kind of, I was always exposed to it. Every Christmas we would go and deliver the holiday gifts to all the tenants. And it was a 19-unit property, and since then we've grown the portfolio. My dad's portfolio is upwards of 50 units in Vista.
Yeah.
And I manage all that now. He lives down in Mexico, but
we're in Mexico.
He's down in Playa del Carmen.
Lovely.
Yeah, my parents both live down there. They built a dream home on the water for a fraction of the cost of a La Jolla home.
Of course.
Yeah, they got a cenote on their property.
Oh my God.
They're living the life. Plus, the cash flow here goes double or triple. It goes 2 or 3 times as far down there because just the cost of living is so much lower. But coming out of college, I graduated in 2015, UC Santa Cruz, and I came back not really knowing what I wanted to do. It was a business management economics major, emphasis in accounting. And I'd always had interest in real estate. And just my dad said, hey, well, if you don't know what you want to do, I just purchased this building through this guy named David Cameron, who worked at South Coast Commercial. Okay. You should shadow him and see if you want to, do what he does. And so I did that one day, followed him around town, saw he went to some of the properties he had listed, some of the properties he was managing, and, yelled at some tenants who were behind on rent, backed up his managers. And, it was just kind of good getting a taste at a higher level, like what people are doing in this space. And he was really sharp on the numbers and shared a lot of his information, shared a lot of his expertise and insight and what the potential of this career could be. And I was hooked. I said, let me try this for a while. And I think that's like anything in life. If you don't know what you want to do, you just got to start trying stuff. So.
Yeah. And would you say, it's funny because you have a similar upbringing that I do. It wasn't my grandfather, it was my grandma. Mm-hmm. On my dad's side, Jeannie B. Campbell, real name was Fiara, was the last name, Italian woman. And God bless her soul, until 91 years old, she was driving around in a little S10 truck in South Bay, San Diego, Chula Vista, National City, knocking on doors, collecting rent. And so she built a little portfolio of maybe 30, 40 units, right? But all owned by herself. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And free and clear at that point in her life. And your little Italian woman, knocking on the doors, collecting rent. And she passed that on knowledge-wise to my dad. And then my dad was kind of that transitional character in our family because no one had really made it. Okay. And then, he had a tough upbringing, but then came back from Vietnam and got into brokerage first. Okay. Like everybody kind of starts that way. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then got into building single family homes. Mm-hmm. And then that led to kind of multifamily stuff. Mm-hmm. And then kind of I grew up digging ditches on his job sites, doing all this little stuff and learning the value of a dollar. Right. But yeah, a kind of similar path.
It's cool because it's they call it generational wealth through real estate, but really I feel like the generational wealth is in the mindset that gets passed down. And so anytime I talk to any, buddy who's got a kid who was in my position, I've got an intern right now who's the son of one of my clients who I put into a building, and I said, hey, I remember when I was in your shoes, and to the client, the father, I said, hey, have him come and shadow me. If you want him to actually take what you've built and take it to the next level, get him hooked, get him involved in this business.
Yeah, find out if they really like it.
Let me yeah, find out if he likes it, but let me kind of like show him why he should like it.
Right.
It's hard to figure out. This is like such a mystical field for people. It's like gibberish. People don't understand what goes on in the background, why buy real estate. Because on the surface, it's a lot harder to acquire than stocks or your 10-year treasury bond and stuff like that. But and it's easy to oversee all of the benefits that go on in the background, which is like the appreciation, the depreciation write-offs that you get, the principal
tax
pay
benefits,
down,
right?
And the liquidity that you have from it,
the beauty of what they call cash out refinancing, that whole game, right?
Exactly. So like, most people don't understand that. Like we live in this space. It's like, it's what we're excited about, but it takes a while, even for me. It took me like years to figure that out.
What would you say to somebody that is in fear of debt?
Well, I would say I was fearful of debt at one time too. But once you know your business model like the back of your hand, and then you learn how debt works, debt will allow you to be 5 times as effective as if you did not utilize debt.
Yeah.
One example would be like, if you were to pay for $1 million property all cash, and then you're going to spend $200,000 to rehab it, and now the property is worth $1.5 million. Well, you're all in to the property yourself for $1.2 million, and you only made $300,000. That's still a good return. But what if you were only spending $200,000?
Physical capital of your own.
A physical capital, and now you're making $300,000. The ROI is like 1.5x,
right?
Versus the like
not to mention the scalability of your money.
Yeah,
because now you can go do 2 or 3 of those deals at the same time.
Exactly, but we're comparing 150% return to a 30% return, and that's the beauty of debt. And like you said, now I can go and do 5 times the number of deals.
Yeah,
and scale them and recognize appreciation tax free and get the depreciation benefits that I was talking to my partner this morning because crypto's up today and he's heavily invested.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, hey dude, if you're going to sell that stuff, we got to buy some property to get a cost segregation and offset those gains this year.
Well, yeah, you can just buy it with crypto these days. They'll transfer that stuff in and tokenize it.
Exactly. I'm excited to see what happens with that, because that makes a lot of sense. The whole title transfer, like having it on the blockchain would be, a lot. It's just, that's a logical thing to do with.
Yeah, there's companies out there. I mean, there's redswan.io is one company, but there's plenty of others coming into that space, figuring out how to tokenize a piece of real estate to where you can sell it off in fractions of fractions, right? Even you talk about buying a $1,000 piece of a REIT, right? Or crowdfunding or whatever it may be. Yeah. Well, take that to the 10,000th level because they can sell that and fractionize that. And then because of the blockchain, you can track it all, right? If it weren't for the blockchain, you couldn't track it. And then you couldn't give title to people. So the whole thing about syndicating or doing this kind of real estate investing stuff is you want to be able to track who owns the contract, right? Who owns the piece of investment, and then the title insurance and the title to the property. Right. So,
I mean, yeah, the title, the one complicated thing to me about the title thing, which I'm sure there's a workaround, I just don't understand blockchain well enough, is like a lot of times some of the plays on real estate are to buy a larger lot and then partition it into smaller lots, or sometimes buy portions of other people's lots and then assemble them together so that then you can have a larger development. So how does that work when you're buying portions
and you're subdividing it?
I feel like that's where it can get complicated, but I'm sure there's a way around it.
Yeah, I mean, of course, absolutely, there's a way. I mean, if you'd use the plot maps and all that stuff, and I'm sure they can build that into the blockchain, and that way you'd have actually.
Yeah, well, I'm sure it'll happen in our near future because it's around the corner. But you mentioned syndications, and one specifically blockchain related. I was part of one of them at one of my first real estate deals that I got into. Was I was just hustling in my career, and I was so consumed with doing deals in real estate. My dad said, "Hey, we just did a refinance on a property. I would like to invest it. Let's go find a deal." And I said, "Hey, no, I've got 10 escrows," which at the time was like overwhelming to me because I was learning so much and didn't know how everything worked. And I said, "Hey, and I had a lot on the pipeline. So I just don't have the time right now. I'm still mastering being a broker. So like, this is going to take me another 1.5 to 2 years. Let's just park the money with this client of mine who's a syndicator."
Okay.
And then, in 2 years from now, I'll be at a point where we can, this deal will be flipped out and we'll get the money back, and we can, then I can take it and we can go do it ourselves. But as it turns out, that syndicator was just like a bad dude, and is currently serving like 14 years in San Diego prison.
My gosh.
But he lost like $500,000 worth of money between my own investments and the investments of my family.
Okay.
So, but as it relates to the blockchain,
how many millions does he lose of investor money?
Oh, I think there's probably upwards of 3-4 million.
Oh my God.
At least.
Fraudulently.
Yeah, fraudulently. And the way it was fraud is he was touring properties that, and informing us and giving us K1s on properties that allegedly we thought we owned, but he had like sold the interest in those properties early on, and like was touring us on the progress. I don't know how he pulled it off, but like, you know, we're touring properties that were like under construction. He's like, yep, and this is what we're gonna do over here. And like,
and having you invest into those?
Yeah, we were invested
but
already.
They're already purchased and invested in by others or whatever.
Well, they were already, like, he had sold it to someone else. And then like, as it was being built out, we were touring a property that we no longer owned. He no longer had interest in.
Oh
so it was like a complete sham, but like, it was a great learning experience for me. And I'm happy
so that's
it
basically a
happened.
Ponzi scheme.
Exactly. Yeah.
And he's taking your money thinking you're going here and he's putting it over here.
Yeah, totally. And probably paying off other investors, keeping the card house afloat. But, you know, it was a great learning experience for me because now, you know, we're working with a lot more money than just $500,000. And at the time I was naive and like, you know, believed everybody, you know, wanted, and that was good for business. It helped me with sales because I could interact with people. Now it's like, you got to have this like kind of buffer layer of protection before you fully get in bed with anybody or trust them or do business with them. And so I'm happy I learned that early on when it was just $500,000, which is a lot of money, but
it's a lot of money.
Could be a lot more money now.
Sure. Yeah. Man, that is, and that's kind of, I mean, obviously it can happen in any industry. It's just wild to me that people have the audacity to justify it in their brain that they can pull that off. Meaning, what usually starts with, if you talk to any of these people that have done Ponzi schemes, right? You can even talk to Gina Champion, right? I don't know if you remember that one.
Oh yeah, that's the one with the
$400 million right here in San Diego.
The restaurants and stuff.
Correct.
Yeah.
And you talk to her and all these people that ran, and they said, well, it started off with good intentions. I'm like, Jesus. But at some point, your core values and your integrity went to the side because you justified it in your brain that it was easier to not talk to your investors through communication, but instead try to hide it and cover shit up over here.
Well, I think it's like a psychopathic tendency. I don't know that it could ever be like good. I mean, maybe it started with good intentions, but
meaning
like,
she was running a legitimate businesses, but then what happens is one starts to operate poorly. So she uses these funds here to go over here.
Right.
And then she justifies that. She says, well, I just won't tell them here. We'll put it over here. We'll make it up and then we'll put the money back. Right. It's that whole bullshit.
Yeah.
But I'm saying the point being is rather than have like, let's have a conversation with our investors and be forthright and say, hey, we're having a problem here. How do you guys want to handle it? How should we work through this? What do we want to do? And having kind of a courageous, tough conversation.
Yeah.
You go pull that crap.
Right.
Which it's always going to end poorly.
And that's
just a matter of time.
And at the end of the day, after going through the investigations with the San Diego DA and stuff, that's exactly what was happening on our projects. Although, I mean, it was so reckless and negligent that like, I don't know how you could, at a certain level, you're just like lying, dude, and you're touring properties that we don't own anymore. I mean, like you're just lying through your teeth to our face. So I think there's a level of like psychopath that's like involved with that too, which kind of scares me. And I like, there's like a lack of empathy for the people you're working with and other humans. But there's also really good syndicators out there too. And I know that you guys operate a business as well. So how do you guys like silo for each project, or do you have a general fund? How do you manage your
both
business?
So we have deal by deal.
Okay.
And kind of getting started, like I have a lot of people that'll come to me, how do you start to syndicate? And I said, well, we thought, let's just start a fund. Well, you have to understand, if you're going to start a fund, people that invest with you into that fund, they're buying into your strategy because you don't have deals per se to go into. So they got to believe in you and your strategy. Well, it's tough to believe in you and your strategy if you don't have a resume or reputation. So I then pivot people. I said, honestly, the best way to start is deal by deal. And you raise money for one deal and then you get it done. And then you raise money for another deal, you get it done. And then now you have a track record and a strategy to then say, okay, we go after these types of properties. Here's our entrance and exits to them. Here's our projected returns that we got for our investors. And here's kind of the rundown. Right. Yeah. And then now they can believe in the strategy to where now you can go do a $25, $50 million fund and it's based on X strategy. And then people buy into that strategy because they trust, hey, I'm going to put my $50,000, $100,000, $500,000 with these guys. they're going after distressed multifamily deals in these markets.
Right.
And that's the strategy.
And you have to, and you can't, I mean, I know BlackRock does it all over the place, but like, I think that our power is local, with the local understanding of San Diego and our particular investment that we go after. For me, it's, you know, I do a lot of stuff that's houses by San Diego State where we build ADUs.
Yep.
I know the exit. I know the costs. I know the logistics. I know that the tenants need to get in before August 20th or we miss the boat and then they're out for the next
So are you
year.
buying, because then you probably know Rudy Medina.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've toured properties with Rudy.
So then, because I know they were doing a lot down there too, and a lot of the guys down there, they'll buy the single family or the 2-bedroom, 1 bath, and then put the ADUs in the back.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. This is the same business model. Rudy's done a ton of them. Work with his partners, Keith and Joel. They've built some properties.
Yeah. Keith's doing quite a bit down there.
Yeah. I was talking to him yesterday. They just built Monty, which is like, I think it's a 30-unit project right on Montezuma. Then they've got some big stuff.
Yeah. I think Rudy was involved in that one. Montezuma?
Yeah. Well, I think Rudy, and then I think they're partners with Grant Cardone too on some stuff.
Well, so the story with Grant Cardone. Do you know that story in Rudy Medina?
No.
It's a pretty cool one. So Grant Cardone lived here in San Diego on Camino de la Costa, and this was back in the late 90s, early 2000s. He walks across the street one day. This is when he was doing his coaching and car business stuff.
Okay.
Sees a house, and there was a broker getting ready to put it on the market. It was Windansea Beach.
Oh yeah, he's told that story before. Yeah.
Knock, knock, knock. He sees the lady, starts talking to her, and he says, "No, don't put it on the market. We're gonna buy it."
Okay.
Ends up buying it for $4-something million.
Okay.
Flips it for $9 million and change. Okay.
Wow.
And that was the first big check. He says, like the first lots of zeros in one check.
Yeah. Yeah. That's crazy.
And he didn't know exactly what to do with it. I mean, he'd made money before, but that was like the first big zeros. And then he ended up running into a couple people, but one of them was Rudy Medina, who was working with Marcus and Millichap at the time.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. And so they ended up partnering on Grant Cardone's first 2 multifamily deals. And Rudy and his family found him, and then they partnered on him. One was a 30 unit in Point Loma. That was the first one. The second one was a 48 unit in Vista.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And those are the first 2 deals that Grant Cardone ever did with Rudy. And then they did those, they exited them. And then Grant started to go into Tucson.
Okay.
Buy a bunch of deals in Tucson, got stuck there for like 10 years.
Well, yeah, because the Tucson had a big boom bust.
It went up and down, right?
Yeah.
So he had to ride out of that. And then once he got out of it, now Grant Cardone's Grant Cardone.
Yeah.
But that's kind of his story, but it all started here in San Diego.
Yeah. I know he started in San Diego and he's kind of like, now he's big in Florida and like other markets, but yeah, anyway, so they're back to like the original thing, working with local people. I think real estate, you have the edge when you're the local expert. I mean,
100%.
What works here doesn't work in LA. It doesn't even work in Orange County because they got different zoning regulations. They got different rules on how to maneuver with tenants and you know what your max rent can be and all this stuff. And it definitely doesn't work in Tucson where it's a completely different game. Yeah. So you have to kind of work with local experts, local syndicators if you want to get your feet wet in a business, or agents that are in that market to help explain you or connect the dots.
When did you get your broker's license?
Well, I got my agent license in 2015, and then I got my broker license in, I don't know, it's 2020, 2021.
Okay. And then did you start the offshoot Lion CRE?
Yeah. So Lion CRE, that's our Lion's commercial real estate is
kind of like your team.
Yeah, that's my team. My partner, Adrian Gonzalez, we do everything 50-50. And then we have, I think 4 agents underneath us right now. And a couple new guys who are just kind of coming on, getting their feet wet. But that's our team within South Coast, and I've been at South Coast for 10 years, and it's been a great journey. Great. One of the reasons that I've learned so quickly is that everybody's been readily available to share information with me. Yep. And then we try to provide that same kind of communication and training for the people on our team. You know, when they have questions, because it's like drinking from a fire hose. When you want to come and learn real estate, it's not like you can go take classes at SDSU or whatever university, but that's like teaching you what was happening 10 years ago. Like you need to know what's happening today. What are costs today? What are the rules today? And what are they?
And what's the street cred, I call it, right? Because there's the street way of doing it.
Oh yeah.
And then there's the book way of doing it.
Yeah. There are ways that we can't talk about on a podcast or publish, but there's also the ways that the book tells you it's supposed to be.
You know what I love, speaking on that topic, because I went to USD's MSRE program. I don't know if you're familiar with that. It's the Masters in Real Estate Development.
Right. Well, Rob Brown did that one too.
Right.
Is that where you met him?
Same program.
Okay. Yeah.
Different years, but same program.
Yeah.
And what I loved about that program is that they had the professors in there teaching you the books. And then you'd have adjunct day where they'd bring in an adjunct professor, which was an actual developer, like real people that are like in the streets every day. And that was the best part because the professors would leave the room. They'd say, JoJo's coming or Smith's coming in. He's going to teach you today. Okay. And I'll never forget this. I forget the guy's name. We had like 3 of them come in. The professors leave and they're like, listen, whatever they said, kiss my ass. Here's how it's really done. Right. And then like they throw it down. They're like, listen, man, I never even went to college. I don't know this, and that. Yeah. Here's the street way of doing it. Right. And this is how we do it behind the scenes. And everybody's just like, oh my God, this is amazing. Oh, yeah. Because that's most of these real estate guys, none of them have college degrees. They're not sitting there with these PhDs in real estate. It just doesn't exist.
It's the business of doers, and not the business of planners and paralysis analysisers.
That's probably one of the best things about real estate is it's probably one of the few industries where you don't need some crazy high degree education. You just need absolute grit, a willingness to learn, and a hunting approach.
Right. And you got to be determined because it's tough to break in as a broker. These days it's, it can take you upwards of a year before you get your first deal. Wow. Sometimes you get lucky, you pop one in 3-4 months. I know for myself, I think I made 20 grand the first year, like 150 the second year. Then I was like 200 the third year. And I was like, I don't know, 350 plus ever, from there on out. And then now the next level in the journey, because then you run out, you can only do so many deals and maintain contact with so many people.
Through investing.
Is the next level up is investing, and that's kind of what I really took off on last year and the few years before that. And that's kind of a big, I'd say about 50% of my time is spent.
Do you partner with your clients on deals, or do you do them independently?
So I have actually I sold a couple properties for a guy in San Diego State. I've sold like 50 of the houses over there. I'm probably one of the most active brokers of turnkey houses with the ADUs built and students rented. So it's like,
and they're perfect for these high income earners, like a doctor, attorneys, these people that have glue that want to offset tax.
And exactly. And they, they'll use them kind of like a car if they, if sometimes their wife can qualify for the full-time real estate professional, and then they can use this as the write-off. So instead of paying $300,000 to the government, they put it into a property. They get a $300,000 loss. And now instead of having the money go fly away, poof, to Uncle Sam, they have a nice property that's generating cash flow and recognizing appreciation, depreciation, principal pay down, all those other benefits.
Yeah, and explain that real quick to people on here, the benefits, this thing called accelerated depreciation through cost segregation, because that is the holy grail, right? Yeah. I always say that you have cash flow that comes from these things. Everybody talks about passive income. I don't really think there's things called passive income. There are, but not really real estate. The only real estate I know that's truly passive is stuff that is paid off and is like full arm's length that's being managed entirely. But that's even then you're still involved managing the managers.
It's true. I think if you can get it to if you're getting a good income with a management company, that's for me to get to passive. And we'll talk about like my goals after. There's a couple questions there. Like the first, let's start with 179, section 179, cost segregation, accelerated depreciation. I'm not like a CPA or tax professional, but what's really cool about that for real estate professionals is that you can use it the same way you would use a car, like as an expense against your personal income in a year as a business expense. And when you buy a property, you can recognize, the general rule of thumb is around 25 to 30% of the value of the property you can recognize in year one as a loss against your personal income. So you buy $1 million house, you have $300,000 that's potentially usable. Now, that's kind of dropped to, I think it's 40%.
Which typically equals about 80 to 90% of the capital you put in it, right? Because let's say you bought $1 million property, 300 grand is your down payment, $700,000 loan. Like you said, 20 to 30% gets written off. Well, that's close to the money you put in it.
Right.
So it almost becomes a 1-to-1 year one in that deal, and then you still have years 2 through 5.
Exactly. It's almost like the way I see it is you're pretty much. I actually have real experiences, especially as an agent. When you go and you buy a property, you get paid a commission on the front end, so I actually make money. So I would either pay like 40 grand in tax. Like there's this one duplex in Vista I purchased. My first cost seg deal was back in 2020. Bought it for like $600,000. I got paid $30,000 to purchase it, and then I also wiped out $60,000 tax liability I had that year. So I saved 60 grand, made 30 grand, and owned a property. So I pretty much the opportunity cost was like 90 grand plus a property that I got to keep. And then beyond the 30% of the purchase price, you actually get closer to a 1-to-1 on every dollar that you spend improving the property if it's cosmetic rehab. So that's most of the deals that I go after is like value add stuff, and that even enhances the benefit of the
Well, yeah, because people
depreciation.
don't understand the value of NOI, right?
Mhm.
And I showed this to somebody the other day. I said every $1,000 per month that you can boost the NOI on a property using, say, a 5.5 cap rate, you're technically boosting the value of that property $220,000. For every $1,000 you in NOI you can boost per month, that's $12,000 a year.
Yeah.
Divided by a 5.5 cap rate, it's 200 and something thousand bucks. I mean, it's wild.
Well, that's what people buy with and that's why I like investment real estate. I don't really sell any residential property that's speculative or like, wife has to enjoy it, like be able to pick fruit in the backyard and entertain guests at the kitchen. I don't care. I just know what a 2-bedroom, 1-bath unit with these finishes in this neighborhood will rent for when it's renovated, when it has a washer dryer and all this stuff. So like, I'm like, okay, well, there's a nice spread here. This is how much it's going to cost for me to get it there. I know that someone is going to buy that not because they care about how they're going to entertain people. They're going to care about it because how much money is it going to make them every month. It's strictly an investment mindset.
Do you see a lot of people because of the cost in San Diego now, and you were just talking on it, where you can go buy a duplex over by San Diego State, put an ADU in the back. So now you have 4 to 5 units, whatever it is, turnkey. Sell that to a high income earner, whether that's a doctor, attorney, whatever else. And they will pay a premium because they're using it as a wealth preservation play. Well, meaning they're not generating a ton of income per se, like, a little bit, but it's more of like the write-offs and the tax benefits they get from it.
That's a big part of it. I mean, I have one client who owns a trucking business, and he makes a lot of money and buys a property by San Diego State almost every year. And a big part of that is to just park it in an asset that's going to be cash flowing. But then another big part of it
is he paying cash?
Or no. He's paying, like he leverages it.
Yeah.
We just sold one for just over $2 million for a house plus an ADU and back. How much income do you think he was making?
How many units?
Just two houses.
Two houses, like 2-bedroom, 1 baths, or
no? It's a 6-bed house and a 4-bed ADU and back.
10, 11,000 a month.
It just leased for $16,800 a month next year.
Holy shit.
These things are trading at like 6.5 caps turnkey with management, third party.
Because of the revenue they're generating.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
From students. Yeah. And so, and you got to think like
because you're renting it almost by bed.
Well, they're rented to a student group.
We have one
lease per house. So like a house with an ADU, so like you're not really leasing it per bed. You don't have vacancy.
Right. Yeah, you're doing a 12-month lease to XYZ company. Yeah, gotcha.
And sometimes they stick around for 2 years. But I mean, where else can you find in San Diego a 6.5% cap rate that is third party managed?
That's crazy.
Yeah, and so
I didn't even know that existed.
Well, the San Diego State properties are those. That's why these people who have full-time gigs are paying $2 million for, 6,000 square foot lots by San Diego State. That's a big price for a lot, but it's the income is there.
Sure.
And that's also
it's consistent because San Diego State's actually growing. Right. And continuing to grow. Right. Which is why people are going in there.
And and then there's people like you or me that find, I mean, it's really hard to get a hold of the properties that don't already have the ADU built, don't already have the model applied. Like, grandma was living there up until today, and I got surrounded by house parties over the last 15 years. Now it's finally grandma's moving out into like an apartment or closer to family, and now she's selling this house with room in the backyard to build 1 or 2 ADUs. And that's like, those are the properties that people like me drool over because we see the value. Okay, I can buy this for $1.1 million, renovate, blow out the main house for like $160,000, and then build 2 ADUs in the back for another $500,000. It's like I'm all into it for, I don't know, 1.8, but the property's worth like 2.2, 2.4. Like, we're trying to push those values. Honestly, these things would be worth at a 6.5 cap, like 2.5. The problem we run up against is comps because these all are residential properties technically. So you got residential
because you're under 5 units.
Yeah. So they don't use the cap rate approach. They literally, like, we've been battling them for years. We've pushed the comps. Initially when I was selling these things, it was like $1.3 million, and now it was like $1.4 million. There's appraisal gaps every step.
So now
of the
you're getting
way.
over 2, huh?
Now just this year we just sold 2 that were over.
Have you guys done an analysis to see how many properties are left? I'm sure you have. That haven't been touched in that area?
I don't know what the exact number is, but I would say it's probably still, I don't know, probably 40% within the prime zone that that still don't have the ADU in back. I mean, it might be a little less, might be like 30% now.
Do you seeing that get run out? I mean, what is your thoughts for San Diego? Because I would say in the ADU game, right? Because of the laws here that allow it to happen at a high level with complete housing and blah, blah, blah. Do you see that running into a wall at some point? Or
I think everything comes down to demand. San Diego State is expanding their campus. We have SDSU West, which is right near your office here, right by Snapdragon. And they're accepting, I mean, I believe that the 2030 plan is like getting it from where it was, which was like 25,000 students, upwards of like 38,000 students in enrollment. So that's a huge growth. It's like 10,000 new people that you need housing for. And there's no way that the ADUs are going to suck that up. I mean, even if it's a 6-bedroom house,
interesting.
Like, you know, you've got 6 people out of the 10 and like, even if they
and trying to get a mid-rise or high-rise built over there for housing is,
I mean, that's what Keith and Rudy are doing. They're building a couple of those. Although with new construction, you have to charge a higher rent.
Yeah.
And so like, we're always going to be like the group housing. And as a college student, you kind of want to live with your friends.
Yeah.
Like, it's kind of one of the whole reasons you're paying for college experience.
Yeah. Cause you're paying for an experience when you go into these brand new construction, mid-rise, high-rise buildings. I mean, you're paying an arm and a leg for it too.
Right. But also you pay for the privacy. But a lot of students don't want the privacy. They want to live with their friends. They want to play video games and party and drink and play beer pong or whatever, you know? So like, I know that's what I wanted when I was in college. So like, that's why the houses
not you, Alexio.
Oh, nope. Yeah. Scout's honor. No. No, but you know, I think we'll always have an upper hand on those projects. And there are a couple of them going up in the area, but even then, because of the increased enrollment, I don't think we're getting close to the ceiling of what San Diego State will.
And between you and Keith and the other guys, are you sniffing them out door to door with these deals over there?
I mean, yeah, I've got some people on my team calling around, and I mean, I get people who call me because we've sold the majority of the homes in the area in the last 6 years. And then we hear about them from people who pitch them to me because I also buy these properties. And one of your questions was, do I ever buy with clients? I was selling a couple of these properties for a client, and you know, we kind of became friends over the process. And then he actually is he's a lender. I had just bought a property that I had found off market, for like, I don't know, $900,000, was doing the whole build 2 ADUs in the back. And I mean, the thing just appraised for 2.2.
Yep.
But to me, it's worth like $3 million because we're making $18,500 a month on that one property.
Wow. Do you hold these things?
A lot of them I hold. I've only flipped actually and sold one of them. I typically cash out refi these things and try to hold.
Well, yeah, why not? Flow. I mean, if you, like you said, if you're all in at what, $1.7 million, $1.8 million today. Yeah,
I mean, that one in particular, we're like all in for 1.6.
Yeah,
I mean, today it would be like 1.8 because prices have come up like $100,000 over the last few years. But yeah, and then
it's worth 2.2, so you have a $400,000 gap.
It's worth 2.2 to someone else at like a 7 cap because like there's an appraisal gap. But like to me, it's worth $3 million because it's a 5 cap to me.
Gotcha.
That's like, I'm not going to trade it for less than a 5 cap because that's what I'm going to find anywhere else if I go exchange it. You know.
Right.
Not to mention my basis is lower with the taxes and all that, making it more appealing. So anyway, my client that became my partner, he's a lender, and like I was trying to finance this whole thing with like my $500,000 that I had saved up, and he's like, "Dude, what are you doing? Like, let's refi out of that stupid FHA loan or stupid conventional loan, and let's put a construction loan on that." I'm like, "What do you mean construction loan?" He's like, "Yeah, dude, we put
12 months.
Yeah, we put $100,000 down or 10% down, but then they're going to finance the majority of the build out.
Yeah.
And like, we only need 12 months here. And then at the end of it, we'll just refi into a stabilized loan.
Right.
I was like, wait, so you mean I only need like 150 of this 500,000?
Right.
That means I can do 4 of these, you know, like,
cause he was doing hard money where so people understand like the financing right now on the hard money side is they'll finance typically 90% of the acquisition.
Right.
And then 100% of the renovation costs, right. To do the deal. So you're coming out of pocket with 10% plus closing costs. Are you having to carry the interest on that thing?
Some of these lenders, I mean, the ones we work with are typically at 15% on the acquisition, and then usually 100% of the rehab. And then they'll build
fund the interest reserve.
They'll build an interest reserve.
Okay, so you're almost coming. It's almost like a 10% because they're taking that as an interest reserve.
Yeah, exactly. So exactly. So that we just put that on the back end, and then all of it gets paid.
So does it accrue or is it paid? Or you have an interest reserve set in there?
The reserve
It's
is
set in
there,
there.
and then it just makes the payments out of the reserve
Gotcha.
until that runs out, and then you got to be making the payments.
Right.
Which is, you know, fine. We there's enough spread on these things to make that made it easier for me to bite off, because that's you're taking a lot of risk as someone who doesn't know what they're doing.
Yeah, there's got to be a delta in there, like you said, to be able to cover this higher interest rate, which is typically 10% ish.
Yeah, around 10. I mean, we're at like 10 and a half ish. I don't know. We have one bank that's doing 9.75. Some others are at 10 and a half, and then there's like different levers that they'll pull. They'll give you more.
So let's say you're acquiring a property at $1 million and they're coming in with 90% of that. So 900 grand plus you're going to do, I don't know, $500,000 in reno.
Yeah.
Right. So they're going to finance all of that. So now you're at $1.4 million total loan.
Right.
At 10% interest rate. So that's $140,000 a year in interest that has to be accounted for in the cost of the deal.
But then if you
plus
go and
points,
sell,
you're gonna have like 2 points on that too.
But then if you go and sell it for $2 million, say even the interest carry and the hold cost was like $200,000 with the property taxes, interest, insurance, all that built in. So you're really all into it for like, I don't know, 1.6. Yeah. But you've only spent $100,000 of your money. That's an extreme example.
It's incredible.
And you just made 400 grand.
Right.
So it's like 400% return in 12 months. Like seriously, this
go
is the kind of
go find where you can pull that one off.
This is the kind of returns that we're finding.
Yeah.
In some of these properties. And that said, one of the big questions I had for you was, you know, one thing I always toy with is the idea of taking on partners or syndicating a project. I've got people who have less capital and just don't know what to do with real estate, but they're, hey, I want to invest with you in a property. And like, you know, I got 50 grand or something. I'm like, okay, well, that's great. I want to help you do that, but it's not enough to get me excited about dealing with like the
investors and all
an
that
extra
shit.
Investor, and then also splitting some of the actual pie on the equity side. So how do you make it make sense to set up syndications versus just doing these on your own?
When the deals get big enough.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know that I would do it on this San Diego State stuff because, you know, you're getting big chunks in a short window and able to control it without the bullshit. Right. Now, go try and buy a $20 million apartment building.
Yeah. You need extra capital.
Correct. So that's where the game of OPM and syndication can play a role. No different than the 80 unit we bought down in National City. Okay. Right. $17 million purchase price, $3 million in reno. I think we're all in at $21 million. Right. You're not pulling that down alone. Even though you get a $14 million loan, we still had to come in with $7.2 million of equity. Yeah. So we came in with 10%. Okay. Raised the rest. And now we get 40% of that deal for bringing in 10% of the money. Yeah. So you get 40% piggybacked off of all the investors' capital that they brought in. Correct. Plus we get tax benefits. There are fees built into that stuff too for construction management, for acquisition, for a disposition type stuff in it. But you're making investors a ton of money. They're going to earn 20+% a year on their money on that deal. Which is better than they can get anywhere else, really. Correct. Because it's opportunity cost of money. I always tell people, I said, finding people who want to invest in real estate is not the hard problem. It's do they like the deal, number one, and do they trust you, number two? Yeah. Right? Because if the deal's great, but I just don't trust you, then it's irrelevant. I mean, you've talked about having to go through getting ripped off, right? By bad people. Exactly. And then I imagine from a syndicator standpoint, you have investor relations management. And if they don't trust you, man, that's like going to be a really annoying fly to keep off your table so that you can focus on the things. Well, sure. Yeah. You got to give investor, you got to give investor updates. Yeah. You know, we have a portal for all that. So all of their legal documents, tax documents, updates, everything goes through photos, things like that. Everything goes through the portal. That's really cool. So you have a good system to set up to keep people informed. Yeah. I feel like if you don't have that and investors start to get, hey, is that guy running away with my money or is he doing anything? I haven't got a phone call in a while. That's a lot of money I gave him. So you got to kind of keep, I think that's proper investor management, is just keeping everybody updated proactively versus reactively. Yeah, and there's softwares out there that do all this now. Yeah. So, you know, I had to learn all that game because, you know, when we got started back in 2009 and 10, you know, we started with a $100,000 condo. Wow. We literally brought in this is like the midst of the financial crisis. We brought in $25,000 down payment, $75,000 loan, right? Took that, flipped that condo from $100,000 to $300,000, and then started buying duplexes and fourplexes. And then you get to a point where we had about, I don't know, 20, 25 units of our own, and I don't know, $3-4 million in the assets at that point. So we're like, oh, we made it. Let's just hold on forever, and we'll just get. But then you start to realize, no, that's not what we're trying to do. But in order to scale, we're running out of money, of our own money. So then this game of, well, how do we leverage our money with other people's money? This whole OPM game. Right. And then, so I had to learn that, the syndication game. And then
Yeah.
how do you do it legally?
Right.
It's where you're abiding by certain laws.
And sustainably, where the investors come back. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. Number one.
And like where is the sweet spot between, I guess, setting up your OM or operating agreement so that they're happy with what they get and you're happy with what you get.
Correct. Yeah. So most investors, look, if you can go to most people and say, hey, I can provide you a projected return of 18 to 20% a year on your money, and it's a 3 to 5 year hold. Here's our game plan. And here's the asset, and here's the story behind it, and blah, blah, blah. Most people are like, yeah, that's great. Because otherwise it's in the stock market earning X.
Right.
And or it's over here in a bond earning X minus, or in a CD. Or so of course, and they want to diversify their portfolio.
Right.
So they still keep stuff here, but then they want to go over here into real estate, but they don't want to manage it. And we're like, great, well, let's collectively pool our money together and let's go buy some real estate and everybody wins.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, then they just have their money sitting out there in just 401k plans.
Do you find that investors typically want to see cash flow every month, or do they they're okay with waiting to see a big payout 4 or 5 years down the line?
Well, quarterly. So we do quarterly distributions when it's available, right?
Okay.
Most of our deals, we can pay out quarterly. A couple of them right now, because of what's happened with interest rates, we've had to then tighten shop, right? And you're seeing that across the board. But we need to protect the asset first.
Right.
I mean, I just had to give an update to our investors on one of our deals in Texas. And once again, this comes down to having tough conversations, because it's when you get into tough times and you have to hold on to the asset. I always tell people, you never lose in real estate if you can just hold.
Yeah, you got to weather the storm.
It's a holding game.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we just need to go through the tough time right now because of what happened in 2022. When the Fed decided they were going to jack interest rates 11 times in 9 months.
Yes. Yeah.
And you have syndicators losing their ass all over the place. And so I was not going to let that happen. I ended up moving out to one of our deals on site to live in it, just to make sure we got it across the finish line, didn't go back to the bank.
Well, there you go. That's the kind of operator you need. Someone who will actually do whatever it takes to keep the ship afloat.
You see that hat behind me? WIT,
whatever it takes. That's
whatever
it
fucking takes, man.
I love that, dude.
Because I'm sitting there watching the rates go, and I'm going, I have no control. I'm watching our interest reserve, which was at 4.25% interest rate, go to 9.5%, and our interest reserve just getting sucked. And I'm going, this is retarded. Yeah. I said, no way in heck I'm going to allow this to happen. A lack of my effort. So I said, let's go.
Yeah, and you were proactive about it. I mean, that's the difference. There's some syndicators who may just be overwhelmed with too many projects or too many fires to put out. Whereas, you recognize that there was an issue, you had the wherewithal, and you said, okay, like I'm going to go divert my resources, my personal problem solving resources to make sure that this is a winner.
And it has, it's been overbearing in a way, but we've finally got the thing somewhat under control at the moment. We're not cash flow positive yet. We're cash flow break even.
Hey, break even is whether you can weather a storm with break even.
Yeah, and we're just trying to survive right now because a lot of these properties that were done during that time, in hindsight now being the peak of the multifamily commercial market.
Especially in markets like Texas or outside of San Diego. San Diego, we don't really see as much of a hit because it's got all those factors. But
we have such a tight, constrained supply. And people can bitch and complain all they want about the red tape. There's a benefit and a drawback to the red tape of doing things here in California. The drawback is it's a pain in the ass.
Oh, yeah.
The good part about it is it keeps supply really tight. Yeah. So that way, if you can weather through the red tape BS, you're going to win big in SoCal, especially San Diego. And I tell people, they ask me, like, you invest in SoCal? I said, well, there's only a couple places I would invest in SoCal. Yeah. San Diego's one of them. And I said, it's a unique market for a few reasons. Our economy is very diverse. It didn't used to be that way. But now between the biotech, the pharmaceuticals, then you have the military, the contracting companies, but not just that, the actual military civilians. And then you put on top of that all the chip makers, Qualcomm, the biotech chip makers. Most people don't realize that San Diego is technically the wireless capital of the United States with all the chips. Know that. And then now you have Google, Apple, and Amazon putting big systems here. Right? They just took down hundreds of thousands of square feet. Yeah. And they're coming in here full throttle. So now you have this mini tech industry followed by biotech, pharmaceutical, healthcare. And then you get, I mean, it's just.
And you worry about that as an investor. You need to be, I mean, I've been worrying about that because I talked to a lot of people, especially in recent years with all of, you know, the interest rates and the economy is slowing down. I wouldn't say we're like in a recession. I think people like are kind of thinking we might soft land this one, but you think about, well, what happens if my tenants lose their jobs? Well, they're going to stop paying their rent.
Yeah.
And then that's going to affect me. If that happens across the board, that could put me in a situation, overbearing situation. Like what,
yeah.
what you're
and we're
feeling.
seeing that in some of these markets outside of the tight markets, you know, Arizona, Nevada, Texas, a lot of the up, down Amazon smile states, I call them, where you had super high growth, a lot of new construction, a lot of new construction came in. Well, now because of high interest rates, cost of construction, that stopped, but then now you have thousands of units on the market and you have oversupply.
Those are the boom and bust markets.
Yeah.
Everybody always talks about them. I mean, they're great when they're shooting up.
Yep.
But they also suck when they're, you know, when they're not shooting up, because they're usually going pretty quickly the other way. But, you know, knowing, even I didn't even know about the chip manufacturer capital, but that gives me resolve, and also I think gives a lot of investors resolve, knowing, hey, we have a diverse workforce, meaning that no one industry could take out the entire renter pool.
Right.
Therefore, it makes it more, you know, when we take into account risk, it makes our investments less risky than some of these other markets that are strictly reliant.
Did you
on
know
one
that
employer.
San Diego is the largest concentration of U.S. military anywhere in the world for the U.S.?
I mean, I can imagine. I grew up here in North County, and I heard the bombs, you know, through the ground that were going off in Camp Pendleton.
Yeah, I didn't know. In that we were on a Zoom a couple years ago with the head of the Navy guy down here, and he was explaining it to us, because once the Pacific Fleet was moved into San Diego out of Hawaii, between the nuclear submarines, the Navy SEALs, you know, half of them are trained here. We train 40% of all the Marines in the world, and then you have all of the actual civilian Marine people in Navy here. And then on top of that, you put the 3 different military bases. And then on top of that, you put all the third-party contracting companies that are here, Northrop Grumman, Lockheed Martin, Spay-War, keeps going. He told me, he's like, San Diego is the largest concentration of U.S. military assets for the United States anywhere in the world.
I had no.
So he said, I guarantee you, we are on a nuke map.
That is another thing that also scares me when we talk about that. I'm like, okay, well, on one hand, it's like almost like your workforce is government backed, which is always, you know, those are the last jobs to go.
Yeah.
And then on the other hand, it's also, you become the biggest target on the West Coast.
Yeah.
If we have a major conflict with international powers, but luckily,
super diverse economy, and I would say because of the military, it's kept San Diego pretty level headed. Meaning we haven't gone crazy left or crazy right. It's you know, kind of middle of the road.
Well, also one of the things you said, like why invest in California? People ask about that all the time. Another factor of it is, it's like, if you know the game here, it's so hard to learn the game here because there's so many more rules. It's like you almost got to. I feel like a real estate attorney.
Encyclopedia of rules,
And so once you know it, there's very few people who've made it that deep and are as confident
and are willing to put up with it.
And therefore, like, it's like kind of open season. You're just like, you're the only one who sees the value everywhere. Yeah. So,
and you're the best of the best that made it through it. Right. Because most people can't weather through it.
And it takes 10 years of doing it every single day, like 50 hours a week. I mean, it's not an easy game to master. So
I would agree.
And I definitely by no means have mastered it, but I feel like I'm pretty deep and I'm seeing a lot more opportunity than I did a few years ago.
Yeah. That's interesting. Talk about your family, man. You married, 1 kid, and it sounds like you got another one on the way.
Yeah, so I'm married. I've been with my wife, met her in Santa Cruz. We've been together for, I think we just celebrated our 11th anniversary of like
being together.
Dating.
Okay.
We got married in 2021 in we had a really cool wedding in the Dolomites, Italy. It was a destination wedding.
Really?
During the whole still kind of lockdown.
Okay.
And then we had our first kid. He's 2 years old, Cruz.
What's his name? Cruz.
Yeah, so we named it after Santa Cruz. And then we've got our next kid coming in the next 3 weeks, sometime mid-February.
Holy cow!
So life's about to get even more real. And then one of the things I love about real estate, and one of the things that my wife and I are both really excited about, is that it like I have this grand vision of my goal is 2028 to be able to move to Europe and like dramatically change our environment and like spice up like the cultures that we interact with, and like just everything within an hour is going to be new and exciting.
So your family's background is French, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm half French. I grew up speaking. My dad's got heavy accent.
Really?
No one really understands him when they're on the phone.
And is it true? 'Cause when I lived in Europe and went to school over there, every single European I knew spoke minimum 3 to 4 languages.
Well, specifically probably in the schools. I mean, I have a few friends who only speak French, but I know that a lot of them speak at least one other language and sometimes 2 or 3. It's very more so international than it is here.
Gotcha.
But what the thing about real estate that's cool that even makes thinking about moving to Europe in 2028 possible is that once you understand how to create these opportunities and really dramatically increase your equity quickly through like these flips or cash out refinances or adding value, building an ADU, 5 ADUs, whatever. I see a roadmap to get to a point where, I'm, 30 plus K a month with a trajectory towards 50 to 100K a month over like a decade. I could get to 30K a month probably by 2028. And then in Europe, that goes a lot further.
Sure.
Like that would satisfy all of the needs of my family.
And that's coming out of some of these ADU houses and stuff around state
houses
and
here,
other.
I mean, apartment deals. I mean, I one of my biggest learning projects was this property east of downtown. I've talked about it a couple of times.
I heard about it. You thought it was a year deal. It took 4?
4 years to get the permits. And it was just converting 5 garages. I was like, what the heck is going on? But I learned about MEP and pretty much everything else, ROW, street traffic control, all that crap for just 4. That's like what you would have to learn for like, I don't know, building a 15, 20 unit property.
I'm about to say, so I grew up in land entitlement.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, so
I mean, the shit show of land entitlement, especially in California. It's like just literally trying to pee into the wind.
Begging your planners to just come back and like not contradict what they said in the last email.
Isn't that so annoying? You're like, listen, dude, you gave me the red lines. We fixed the red lines and now you have more red lines. I said, what?
Yeah. Yeah. And then now, a lot of people, certainly didn't. And that project was a total home run even before the ADU stuff. And like, especially with the trajectory of the market since we bought it, we refinanced out of that thing. We returned 100% my dad put up all the capital to purchase it. Okay. Returned 100% of the capital over this latest refi. Plus like there was like $200,000-300,000 left over and we still own the property. So it's like, we're into it for $0. Actually, we got, after 3 years, 5 years of hardship, we got a couple $100,000 and a free 10-unit property. Yeah. So that's incredible. And that's what you can create in some of these situations when you're creating that much value, when you're building that many units, and you're increasing the income by like the $1,000 a month, the 250. If you do that at scale times 15, it's like huge. You can really create a lot of wealth. And then when you get to a point where you're like, okay, I've got enough wealth. If I park this stuff, even at just a 5% cash on cash return, right? If I can get it to where it's making 30 grand a month, like that, and with third party management and like a little buffer for trips to come and crack the whip on the management company every so often.
Sure. Would you maintain a place here locally and then move, or do
both? Honestly, maybe I would do that, but I think we would. Right now, I just rent the condo that we're in.
And why Europe? Is that just so you could expose your kids to different cultures, different environments? Actually, like you said, cool thing about Europe is it's very urban to where you can get around.
Well, yeah, there's so many cultures like everywhere, and we've been to Europe many times, and we just love. Every time we're there, it's so new and exciting. I've lived in San Diego and I love San Diego. I'll always love San Diego. I've just lived here for 30 years. Yeah. And I'm ready. I've done everything within a 10-hour drive up here. Yeah. Like many times. Yeah. And even like 5-hour flights from here, so I'm big on traveling and seeing different cultures, and going there would open up a lot of new places that we haven't been to, and really, and also with our kids, we like the idea of, the way we want to parent and stuff. It's more aligned with the values that they have over there culturally. Yep. Heavier emphasis on nutrition, heavier emphasis on getting outside in nature. Yeah. And just the parenting styles and just the types of people that we interact with over there are typically like we just vibe. When you meet people and you're just vibing with them, there's a lot of people over there, and I have those people here too. It's just definitely fewer and further in between. So
the nutrition things kind of come up quite a bit recently, and
RFK.
RFK, but I've known about it. You can just go on and watch these documentaries, and then you realize the history of the food supply system in the United States.
Dude, it's terrible. It's like,
and you see all the process, the chemicals, you know, they used to, back in the day, and I'm saying back in the day being 1990s, 1980s, so not terribly far out, they'd have real wheat, right?
Mm-hmm.
And everything was organic without having to be called organic. And then they started the whole game of dwarf wheat in processed foods and hyper processing. And so what's happened is all these little mini chemicals have gotten into all the food supply. And then you wonder
all the nutrients
why we're having all the spikes and all this stuff, obesity, dementia, kids ADHD. I mean, the list keeps going, right?
Diabetes, heart problems. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. And then you're like, oh, I wonder why that's happening. It's like it directly related to when they started doing all this shit to the food. And you can see the direct correlation, but then no doctors want to talk about it.
Well, it's
no politicians definitely don't want to talk about it.
You know, and then you say trust the science, but I for the most part, my whole life I have. But then recently with what happened during COVID and stuff, I just lost a lot of I guess dumb respect for like dumb absorption of what they're telling me, and I'm like, none of this is making sense. Like red flags right and left. Like they are also contradicting.
They don't even believe their own shit.
So like now I'm just like I'm like double checking everything with what sounds right. I don't just take it as automatic.
And listen, if there was one great thing that came from that is hopefully more people question everything.
Right, woke up to that.
Question everything, because I appreciate what the media likes to tell you. I appreciate what the people in power like to tell you. And maybe they're coming at it with good intentions. Maybe they're not. But if you're just taking it blindly and going into what I call groupthink without asking a couple just questions,
right?
And being a little bit skeptical, and maybe you're proven wrong, maybe you're proven right. It's irrelevant. You just ask questions and don't just accept it blindly as a human being for what it is.
And that's what was happening. And now it woke a lot of people up. And I mean, whether you like all their policies or just a few of them, I think that's why we saw a big shift towards the Republican Party in this last election, was that just people were sick and tired of what they were being fed from the other side. Sure. And maybe they don't agree with, I mean, I certainly don't agree with everything that the Republican side is doing, but I personally I felt taken advantage of, and I was so sick of listening to, you know, this is what you should do, and if you do this, then you don't have to worry about anything. Oh, and then, eat these foods. These foods are fine. There's like all these studies about it. Well, who funded the studies? Oh, the manufacturers of the foods.
And then the chemical companies who support.
It's just like, well, there's a circle here of influence that doesn't make sense. So, anyway.
Yeah, the food thing's a big deal. I'll be interested to see how that rolls out. And I honestly believe that if you sat down 3/4 of this country, 3/4 of the United States would be Joe Rogan like libertarians, right? Like they're not even Republicans or Democrats. Like they probably are when it comes to maybe safety, security, borders, financials, maybe a little more right. When it comes to maybe social issues, probably a little more left. Right, that's libertarian. Right, and they would align. You could probably sit down and everybody could have a beer with Joe Rogan, and I bet you 75% of this country would align with that. Unfortunately, that party doesn't exist.
Well, fortunately, it's just like the polarized corners are like the only two options, and it's like, which one am I slightly closer to this time?
Right. And it's frustrating because they pigeonhole you.
Well, and then like I remember after this most recent election, like I said, hey, I'm happy with the outcome, and I had like a bunch of friends who were like, you voted for the racist party. Like you have zero empathy for anything. I'm like, first of all, empathy means trying to get an understanding of someone else's like point of view before passing judgment. Yep. Which is exactly what you just did. So I'm sorry that you feel that way. I hope everything works out the way you wanted to, but this is just what I thought was the best move.
And you know, what's funny, if you actually sat down with those people that just did that to you and talk about the actual issues, you'd probably align on a lot. Now there's things you won't, but you'd probably align on a lot that you didn't think you probably did.
I agree. And I think that's why it's good to have conversations like we're having and share these conversations and have conversations with people who have contradictory viewpoints. And that's something we don't do that much of in the U.S.
People puts a wall up, then you start naming, you're this, you're that, you're this,
growing
you're
up in a in my French family with like European, culture, the dinner table is that's like your church. Every single night you sit around the dinner table with your family. That's really important. And that's a big theme of Europe as well. And you talk about what happened during your day, and you invite people over and you talk about the things that are like those edgy subjects. Versus here, it's like we just talk about the fluff because we're so terrified of offending people, and that's especially been a trend in the last 8 years.
Yeah, the PC,
right?
PC.
Yeah, PC movement, which has been frustrating for a lot of people, and I think it's just probably the standard pendulum. It'll probably go too far right and then go left again soon. It's just kind of the natural nature.
I totally believe that's probably one of the cool things about this country, the United States, is that because we are, call it democratic, if we want to call ourselves that, and I do believe we are. When we go one way too far, the country tends to swing back. Right. And then, like you said, it could go crazy far right. And everybody's like, dude, that's cray cray. Let's swing back.
Right.
And then you'll see it move the other way.
Yeah.
And then once again, you see these pendulums. And as long as at least we can maintain free speech, because that's the key. Right. It's the free speech in the country to be able to share that.
Man. And that was why this last one like affected a lot of people, is that it was like evidently like people were being silenced left and right.
Yeah.
And like, misinformation.
I mean, when Zuck comes out, I mean, it's like, I feel like an awakening happened with that guy.
Oh man.
He's on Joe Rogan's podcast. Did you watch this?
Yeah, I saw that. He was like talking about how I was being pressured. I'm like, also, you're a politician yourself, for the head of a company. You got to say what you got to say so that the next 4 years go all right for you.
Yeah. You're drinking some of that Kool-Aid too, Zuck, but listen, it's fine that you have had an awakening. I'm cool with it. And now you're maybe back to center. I appreciate that.
It's crazy the shift of tides and narrative that you see even from like those, I don't know that Zuck would have done that if there was if there was the same party maintaining.
Of course not.
Power.
He's going to move and shake as he needs to, but I appreciate him at least acknowledging it.
But people respect that, and then that becomes the narrative. A lot of people are influenced by those by what these leaders are saying. Yeah. And I think that's healthy for people to encourage free speech, interaction, discussing controversial ideas.
That's right. Even if you don't like it. We can
bring back to the enter so that we don't get so polarized as the news wants us to be. We become those middle of the road libertarians, as you said.
Yeah. And I honestly believe that. I just wish there was an actual party that was that way, but it's not, doesn't exist.
I want to bring one. I know we're probably coming up on time in a little bit here, but one thing that's crazy right now is these LA fires. And I don't want to talk about the politics of like,
I went to Pepperdine
or whatever. You went to what?
I went to Pepperdine.
Did that just burn down?
No. Thankfully, so back in the 70s, there was a major fire around Malibu and Pepperdine. So half the campus burned down. So they put they have like literally their own fire department.
Wow.
At Pepperdine.
Wow.
Like, literally.
Probably like their own like tanks and stuff.
Yeah. I mean, they're very, very well prepared because of that. But yeah, I mean, I know all those areas, Topanga Canyon, going through Woodland Hills, Calabasas. I mean, it is unbelievable.
I was like looking at it again today, and I was almost like coming to tears, like starting the day. I was like, gosh, this is just heartbreaking.
Yeah, it's beyond it. I'm like the PCH that we've driven down many, many times. Yeah.
And then, Grant Cardone's house miraculously is the only one that didn't burn down. I'm like, what happened here? But I'm like, I never thought that houses on the water, literally like waves breaking underneath, could burn. Like, like this is just something that I never thought was even in the cards.
Yeah. And then, but you don't understand it till you understand how fire works and how fire creates its own weather pattern. Did you know this?
Well, I mean, I look at a couple of videos and you can see their own tornadoes, and you can see like what looks like a snowstorm, but with embers just shooting through the air. And I'm like, okay, that's not something that you can put out with a garden hose or a fire hose. You know,
when you talk to these firefighters that know how this stuff moves, and then you add normal Santa Ana winds which got heavy, right? 40, 60 mile an hour winds. Yeah. Then you add the fire to it that turns into an inferno
everywhere.
Now they create their own weather pattern, and it's like self-sustaining.
And that's what I was thinking. I was like, well, you can't just hope for the rain at that point, because it's just going to push the rain away. So it's terrible what happened. But from a real estate standpoint, I'm actually kind of curious, like, how long does it take to rebuild? This is going to impact the demand for housing. Already, my wife was saying that just yesterday she was at Faneuil Park, and she met a couple families with their kids. We were like, yeah, we just lost our house. We're staying in an Airbnb down here because every single Airbnb around Los Angeles County is filled up. And, we're looking for
you've lost over 10,000 structures. Okay. So put that in perspective. For us to even build 100 homes in Southern California takes years of planning. So now the governor has said, we're going to fast track planning, do all this. And so there's a lot of promises being made. You would have to hire, let's take LA County. They'd have to hire and build an entire new department of planning and fast track all this stuff through and hire hundreds of planners and people to even have a chance. This is going to take at least 15 years.
to build back. I mean, even
At
just removing
least.
the rubble will take a year. I mean, we're talking about 5 times the size of PB just in houses gone.
Just dust.
Like just rubble on the ground. Like where are they going to put all that? Like where is it going to go? Like and then how many truckloads and truckloads and truckloads and then coming back and building again. I'm like, okay, now it's going to impact the workforce.
Well,
too.
these aren't your track homes.
No, these are spec.
I mean, you're talking
out,
there's
buildings.
I don't think there's a single home that burnt, even in Pasadena, Altadena, and all these, under $1 million.
Oh
Right?
yeah,
And that's just because of cost of real estate. But any of those homes,
even the cost to rebuild probably 800.
oh, and that's I think
the
the biggest thing not being discussed is the underinsurance, right?
I think
you can
about that
set
too.
aside the people that don't have insurance, right? That's one segment. But I'd be willing to bet you that 80% of all the homes that have insurance that were burnt down are underinsured, mainly because of the cost of construction,
which
right?
is about to go up again.
The
with the demand.
replacement cost.
Yeah.
You know, they have a $20 million house. That thing is underinsured.
Oh yeah.
There's no way, because it's probably going to cost you 25 to build it. It's not going to happen. So that is probably the biggest conundrum. And yeah, there's a lot of people with money, right? A lot of people with money. So that's going to help. But still, man, I mean, you have 100-year-old homes in the prestigious hills of.
Dude, it's just heartbreaking. I'm like, you think that it just would, like whenever I would think of a fire, I'm like, okay, maybe it gets the homes on the outskirts. Then we put it away.
Yeah.
It's like, it just took over entire communities, house to house to house. And like with this snowstorm of just embers, it's just, I mean, it's crazy, the destruction. But like, I wonder what happens to all those people. We're talking about 10,000 homes, maybe call it 8,000 houses.
Yep.
With families of 4.
Yep.
I mean, that's, 24,000 people that need like roofs over their heads somewhere in somewhere in California. There's not 24,000 vacant homes.
No.
Right here. And definitely those kind of people aren't looking for a 2-bedroom, 1-bath apartment. Do we even have that supply? Like, I don't even know where they are right now. I mean, this is only a week into this fire. Like,
Right.
Are they under shelter at like the Rose Bowl or something? Like, are they with
Well,
friends?
they're teaming up. Everybody's teaming up
Yeah.
in neighbors and friends' houses in the short term.
Yeah.
But once again, a month or two from now, that's going to change, and they need to find actual more permanent home.
Yeah.
And then that home's going to have to sit there because it's going to take them. I don't care what they tell you. This is a 15-year rebuild plan minimum.
Yeah.
Minimum.
There's not even the workforce for that.
Yeah. I mean, I guess you don't want to get yourself kind of digging into it, but guys, it takes 3 years to build a luxury house, and all these homes are luxury homes.
Yeah,
all
let
of
alone
them.
design it, permit it, get approval.
The PCH. Think
the
about the
Coastal
eco
Commission, all the stuff.
Think about the eco for the ones along the PCH, which is probably, I don't know, 500 homes that burnt down, maybe, who knows, that burnt right along the PCH on the ocean front. I mean, those have to go through Coastal Commission. They have to get planned and designed. I mean, there's so much that has to happen to allow those things to rebuild, and the eco stuff that they have to go through.
And now we're talking about like they're going to have to beef up the government approval. The people working in the
well, that's what I'm saying. They have to like literally
train
open
thousands of people,
a stadium full of planners to pull this off, and that's what so who knows? We'll see. But this is a minimum 15-year. I mean, I was just over in Maui and drive through Lahaina.
Yeah, how's that?
It's a wasteland.
Is it complete? Is it nothing's changed? It's been a year since Lahaina fires.
Yeah,
right?
it's. I mean, they have it blocked off, right? Because you can't drive through. They don't want looting or anything. But it's down to concrete pads. So the whole Lahaina.
Wow.
Now you can go just north of Old Lahaina into Kaanapali and some of those other places, and they're all fine. But the Lahaina is it's ghost. It's nothing. It's just literally concrete pads everywhere.
Yeah.
And it's done. I mean, once again, they're having their own planning issues over there. They can't get anything built because there's infighting between, Howleys and locals and this whole BS that's going on. They can't get anything built. And they're a year. They haven't even done anything other than remove the rubble.
There's the politics of just hiring people and then hiring, now another factor is potentially going to be like, are we going to lose some of the workforce due to this like new borders is pretty strict, and like how that's going to shake out. I know someone was telling me recently, I was talking to Brian, the owner of South Coast, and he said, yeah, I have a property in Fresno, and my workers won't go to Home Depot because they're terrified that they're going to get deported.
Here's the thing. It's given the 10, 12 million that came in here over the last 4 years, right? Because we know that's the number. And then there's another 10 to 12 million that were here before them. illegally. So you have probably 20 million people in this country illegally that they can probably even think of. Even if you were to go balls to the wall for the next 4 years, they're only going to be able to remove probably a couple million. And they're going to be the worst of the worst. So they're going to start with the nasty first.
I mean,
they're going with the nasty people first, the people that want to cause harm. That's how it's going to start. And they're going to go after them, and that's going to take a couple years. And then they may get to the other folks. So I get people's concerns, but they couldn't get them all out if they wanted to. And honestly, you literally have to stick the entire U.S. Army on.
I would say at the very least, if you get like arrested for doing something wrong, that's your ticket out. But like, don't just go start asking people for papers at Home Depot. Like that doesn't make sense. No,
because they're not going to focus on
and not
that.
only that, like we need all the help we can get right now in Southern California. So like,
and listen, for immigrants that are here and for whatever reasons, and it's the ones that want to do harm that they want out, and we want out too.
Yeah, and that's really the main concern about the whole thing to begin with.
Yeah,
is just the people who are taking over apartment complexes in Colorado, or stealing all the people's pets,
and we're seeing it, and it's legit. The gangs and all the bad hombres, as Trump calls them. Hombres. I can't even hombres.
You got to give the guy credit. He does have some he has a funny way to keep you interested.
Dude, the guy is trolling. I mean, I was looking at some of that stuff. I'm like, dude, I think he's personally a douchebag, but he's actually pretty funny. I mean, I got to give the guy some cred for being like a funny trolling guy.
Yeah, at least he's a funny douchebag.
Right.
But heart goes out to everybody in LA, and I am wondering though, the families who need, there's a lot of people who aren't used to living in an apartment building or whatever. They're likely going to just move out of state if they can't find homes. And home values are probably going to go up in other neighborhoods of LA where they need to relocate. And maybe I know San Diego is going to be affected too. But I wonder, does that mean maybe that changes our metrics a little bit in San Diego to focusing more on larger, we've been building studios and micro units for the last, heavily for the last 3 years, but maybe that means we start shifting to 3-bedroom plus apartments to accommodate this, what you said might be a 15-year rebuild of every bit of demand on top of the normal demand that we get, increase in demand that we have. So,
I mean, we talked about ADUs. We talked about the process for investing, San Diego. Where do you see the next, setting this one aside from 3- and 4-bedroom deals, where do you kind of see the move right now in San Diego for the best investments? Is it a flipping game? Is it this buy the 2-1 home over here at San Diego State and put ADUs on it?
Well, that's a good model. It's the spreads are getting thinner, and the value. I mean, I think value add is what we're seeing trading right now. The turnkey stuff is not really trading as much. It's it's just because the cost of money is at 7.5%. I mean, the 10-year was at 4.8 today, or 4.68. It's been, that's incredibly high. So interest rates are just the fact that they're so high. People aren't really parking money in a stabilized product because they don't want to buy a 5 cap in North Park or it's brand new construction when they're pairing it with 7.5 interest rate, meaning that they're going to have to put 80% down. People still only have a limited amount of money. They don't want to just pay cash for properties. So what I'm seeing the deals I'm seeing trade are the value add stuff where there's some kind of a lift or potential to build an ADU. In the event that there is a downturn or something, they're like, okay, well, if that happens, at least I can renovate this unit and increase the value, increase the rent to survive weather that storm, or I can build another unit. It has some sort of play that will shelter you.
Yeah, and then still the renovation game. I mean, people are still flipping. But
the flipping, I think that the flipping profits have gone down substantially because we're not riding the wave up, which inevitably builds in some buffer.
Yep.
And then a lot of the demand has just subsided
because of interest rates.
So expensive to own a home. And this is my theory is I'm like, well, yeah, I'm having a growing family right now. It'd be nice to have a backyard, a 3-2 house in Bay Park, but do I really want to drop $400,000 and take on a $10,000 a month mortgage payment? Yeah. That's gonna handcuff me to the property. I'd rather just keep renting where it makes sense, which for me is we can make it work down over by the beach. It's pretty nice over there. Yeah. We don't have the connected yard, which is kind of tough with a family because you want the kid to be able to play outside uninhibited, but we have the beach right there, so we just go down and do beach time every day. But is it worth me to tie up $400,000 that I could be flipping at 200-300% return year over year and take on $10,000 a month
or more?
Yeah, or more.
Yeah.
So it's like, and that's the same thought process that a lot of people buying these homes that people are trying to flip out of are thinking. You know, they're like, you know, there's this whole American dream, buying the house and owning it, building equity. That way, I think everybody should just consider renting and then building equity in the investment property.
Sure.
Like Grant Cardone says.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, owning a home is a good thing. So I encourage it. But the investing side to move money, right? Move money is where you're going to be able to grow your net worth. And then at some point, sure, you know, purchase a home.
Yeah.
Especially in these high areas of costs.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, San Diego's in the top 5 or 6 in the entire United States.
Yeah.
And technically we're number 1 if you do it on a per capita.
It is. It's crazy to think, you know, we almost don't see it. I don't, you do, cause you see it in other markets. I'm just like living and breathing in San Diego. I'm not really distracted by like, hey, this is a deal that's in Florida or whatever.
Yeah.
If I started doing that, I'd be like, what the heck am I doing here? Why can't I just go buy this oceanfront condo for like $300,000 in like Houston or something?
Right.
Like, you know, that doesn't exist here.
No.
We're like looking at $1 million minimum for anything on the coast, probably closer to $1.5 million.
Yep.
And the nice thing about that, the flip side of getting into a business mindset in a pool like San Diego, is that you go anywhere else in the world and it's like, wow, this is cheap. That's cheap. Versus you start off in Europe and you try to come here. You know, average salary in like Europe for people in their 30s is like $40,000-$50,000 on the high end. And here, you know, you can barely get, you can't survive with that. No. So they come here on vacation and they're like, wow, this is so
we
expensive.
did some, and this was a couple of years ago, the stats. I mean, in San Diego for a family, right, to be middle class, minimum $250 a year. Yeah. For your household income. Yeah. Minimum.
Yeah. It's tough to survive. Especially tough to survive if you're trying to do like the, you know, mom spends a lot of time with the kid and then dad hustles. I mean, you got to like kind of put a ton of weight on your shoulders, way more weight than you needed 20 years ago.
Yes, big time. So, I agree with that. So, but I appreciate you coming in.
Yeah. Hey,
it's just fun.
Appreciate you, Justin. Thank you. Sorry about your shoulder.
I know. I'd give you the right hand. Let's shake that way. Yeah. Where can people find you? Obviously, you're all over online, and I love watching it and sharing information about what you're doing.
Yeah. Well, hey, thanks for having me on. If you guys want to follow me, I'm most active on Instagram, but also on all the platforms. My tag is Cashflow Alexio. You can find me on there. Shoot me a DM. Yeah, love to help you find your next investment property.
Rock and roll.
Yeah.
All right. Peace out, everybody.
Thanks again, brother.
Bet.